I wonder if there's trouble in paradise. I wonder if there is some internal conflict rocking the nest this morning. Now, normally the nest is rocking for reasons of passion. Megan Rapinoe and the Sue Bird enjoying the process of creating a fresh batch of eggs. But today, instead of those eggs being loved and cultivated, instead of those eggs being developed into a new flock of Tweeties, I'm wondering if the Sue Bird is throwing those eggs at her beloved partner. Or maybe the Megster is the wife. I mean, who in the hell knows how she's choosing to identify today? When you're in a relationship with someone, whether it's business or personal, it is critical. It is important to put on a unified front publicly. Now, you can disagree behind closed doors, but in public, you should always back each other. Whether your partner is right or wrong doesn't matter. In front of everyone else, you present a unified front. If you're not unified, it often means that there is a complete lack of respect in the relationship. Take my Saints, for example. Myself, along with most of the fan base in New Orleans, we have been saying for 2 years now that Dennis Allen is not a leader. He is not respected by the veterans in the locker room. This past weekend, we were given yet another example of how much these veteran players in New Orleans do not respect Dennis the Menace. After that disaster Thursday night that was disguised as an NFL game, Saints receiver Chris Olave, he was taking a lot of shit from the fan base for seemingly giving up on a play. Now, publicly, Chris Olave took the blame for it, which I think is a sign of maturity from a second-year player. Publicly, head coach Dennis Allen, he blamed Chris Olave for the play when the blame should have been given to Derek Carr behind closed doors. Over the weekend, Saints receiver Michael Thomas, he got on Twitter. He replies to a tweet from Nick Underhill, who covers the Saints for NewOrleans.football. Michael Thomas, he confirmed that Chris Olave was not to blame on that play. It was Derek Carr. Olave was never supposed to have the ball thrown his way. The only reason that it was is because Derek Carr failed to go through his progressions. Basically, Michael Thomas, he throws his head coach and his quarterback under the bus publicly, which is a sign of a divided locker room. It's a sign that veterans in that locker room have no faith in Derek Carr, but more importantly, they have zero respect for Dennis Allen. You know what would have happened if Michael Thomas came out publicly and threw Sean Payton under the bus? At minimum, he would have been suspended. But he knows nothing is going to happen to him because Dennis Allen is weak. Long story short, the locker room in New Orleans, it's not unified, which I think is a sign that there is a lack of respect for the head coach Dennis Allen. I'm starting to wonder, though, if there is a similar lack of respect in the nest of the Birds or the nest of the Rapinoes. How exactly does that work? When two women enter into holy matrimony, who changes their last name? Normally, I don't like to comment on the personal relationships of public figures. Even though they are public figures, I feel like their personal life, their personal relationships are none of our business. But since the prepubescent boy has decided to publicly support Gaza and raise money, she kind of opened the door to the question, is there trouble in paradise? Is there a lack of respect between Megan Rapinoe and the Sue Bird? Over the last couple of months, the Megster has been strangely silent on social media. Now, to be fair, I'm sure Meg has been very busy preparing for her never-ending series of final games. It takes a lot of time and preparation to go out on that field and pretend to play soccer. But this silence, it is very, very strange from the Megster because of everything that has been going on in the world. Megan Rapinoe is a professional opportunist. She never lets a crisis go to waste. She is always waiting for the next big story that has absolutely nothing to do with her, to find a way to make it all about herself, monetize it for her own personal gain. The overturning of Roe versus Wade, she made all about Megan Rapinoe. Now, never mind the fact that the Megster will never have a need for an abortion. Unless science and biology have drastically changed, it is still impossible for two women to create a baby. I know. Megan Rapinoe has a masculine appearance, but science doesn't care about that. On the inside, she is still a woman. The riots during the summer of 2020, she made it all about Megan Rapinoe. The Megster trying to become the face of Black Lives Matter. She used the riots and social unrest to propel her own career. You think Megan Rapinoe really cares about police brutality? The only interaction she has with cops is when they are hired to protect her. Yet for some reason, Megan Rapinoe has been strangely silent with this war going on in the Middle East. But just because she's silent, it doesn't mean that Megan Rapinoe isn't subtly telling us which side she is supporting. Check it out for yourself. Now, this is a screenshot of the Megster's Instagram account. It was taken around 9 o'clock this morning by one of the guys over at Outkick. Take a look at the bottom of her profile, where Megan Rapinoe is publicly supporting an organization that's raising money for children in Gaza. Now, on the surface, this is no big deal, right? I mean, it's all about the children. We must protect the children. Let's bring them to America where we can provide them gender-affirming care. Let me explain why this is a big deal. Number one, I could not find any evidence where Megan Rapinoe was doing the same thing for the children in Israel. I know, shocker, right? Since Meg is intertwined with the organization Black Lives Matter, I can't imagine that she is overly supportive of Israel. You know, since BLM calls Israel an apartheid state, and one of the co-founders of BLM recently called for the end of Israel. Number two, and I'm wondering if this is actually the reason that Megan Rapinoe has been silent, even though she is subtly supporting Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas. Guess where Sue Bird holds citizenship? Guess which group of people that Sue Bird belongs to? Sue Bird happens to be Jewish. She also happens to hold citizenship in Israel. Well, this is rather strange. Why is her wife actively supporting the group that is calling for their destruction? Why is her wife raising money for Gaza while completely ignoring Israel? But KC, it's for the children. Meg loves the kids. Don't they have kids in Israel? I'm pretty sure Sue Bird used to be a young Jewish kid. I'm sure they need support. I'm sure they could use money and resources. I don't know the relationship dynamic between the Megster and the Sue Bird, but I'm looking at this purely from Sue Bird's perspective. Put yourself in her position. Could you imagine your husband or wife raising money for a region that is actively pushing for your destruction? The person you're supposed to trust the most, they are raising money for people that cannot stand you, and she's doing it publicly. Me personally, I would look at that as a sign of betrayal. I would take it as a complete lack of respect for me. But what's also ironic about this, Megan Rapinoe is raising money for a group of people that don't accept her. You think they care about inclusion in Palestine? You think they care about diversity and equity? Let me ask you this. Which country would Megan Rapinoe and the Sue Bird be allowed to walk the streets hand in beak? Would they be allowed to do that in Palestine, Gaza, or Israel? Hell, Megan Rapinoe would not be allowed to show her face in Palestine. Government rules under Sharia law, where women essentially have zero rights. Yet Megan Rapinoe wants to complain about the pretend oppression here in America while raising money for a region with actual oppression. Someone please make that make sense. This is your typical shitfuck logic. Like I said, that screenshot I shared with you earlier, it was taken around 9 o'clock this morning by Outkick. And credit to them for being smart enough to capture the image. Because when I checked Meg's Instagram 30, maybe 45 minutes later, guess what was mysteriously missing? Guess what had been removed from her profile? Just take a wild guess. All of a sudden, once this article was published and the story was gaining traction online, Megan Rapinoe removed the fundraiser. However, it's not all bad news and negativity this morning. I know there are many of you in this audience who love Megan Rapinoe. I have some really good news for both of you. I know there was a lot of sadness last Friday night for Meg's final game. The Seattle Shitbirds, they were at home in Seattle to begin the NWSL playoffs, where they will be competing for the coveted prize of the Golden Cucumber. Now, this is the biggest prize in all of pretend sports, all of pretend soccer too. The Golden Cucumber, it doesn't need batteries like your typical battery-powered cucumber. The Golden Cucumber is climate friendly. It relies on the power of wind to provide the juice needed for proper use. Friday night, the Shitbirds, they were competing in a quarterfinal matchup with something called Angel City FC. Now, the Fighting Rapinoes, they were able to keep the streak of final games alive by defeating the Woke Angels 1-0. Ooh. So we now have at least one more final game in the series of final games for Megan Rapinoe. But unfortunately for the Megster, it seems like no one cares. Hell, even the mainstream media has lost interest in this story. The Rapinoes, they play their pretend soccer matches at Lumen Field in Seattle, the same Lumen Field that the Seattle Seahawks pack every single Sunday with over 60,000 fans. One of the hardest places to play in the NFL. Crowds in Seattle, very loud, except when it comes to supporting the prepubescent boy. This was a quarterfinal matchup in the playoffs, supposedly one of the biggest games of the season in the NWSL. At a stadium designed to hold over 60,000 people, the Megster was playing in front of 12,000, 20% capacity. Now, I couldn't find the ratings on television for this game, which means the game wasn't broadcast nationally, or the ratings, the audience numbers were so low they couldn't be measured. Either way, it's a bad look for the NWSL. I mean, you can't convince a network to broadcast your playoff games. The WNBA finds a way to get their playoff games on TV. Why can't the NWSL? I thought it was interesting, though, that Megan Rapinoe was publicly supporting Gaza, which I guess is the same as supporting Hamas, right? Now, I don't know too much about the Middle East, but I'm pretty sure Gaza is controlled by Hamas. I just thought it was interesting that Megan Rapinoe is publicly supporting them while her wife is not only Jewish, but she holds citizenship in Israel. Is that a sign of disrespect? Does Megan Rapinoe not respect or support her own wife? I don't know. You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate every one of you guys and your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.